This actually was the first novel that I ever wrote. I wrote it, I think it was 1991, when I was a research fellow at Yale University. It was at the time, in 91, as some of you may remember, during that very painful political transition that was happening in South Africa. And there was a lot of violence, so-called black-on-black violence. People would be in the train, for instance, somebody would just come in with a machine gun and just shoot at random at anybody. So there was a lot of death that was happening in South Africa those days. And we used to read about these things in the newspapers and also, on television, they would be featured and so on. And it was a very painful time, especially for a writer like me, who had been out of the country for more than 30 years or so. So I thought I would write then a novel, capturing just that element of death, the different ways people were dying. But it was very important for me that the story, even though it's about death, should be an upbeat story, and it should be optimistic. At the end we see that actually this is not the kind of situation that's going to last forever. These are just the pangs of death, of a new society. Sooner or later, things will change. It was important for me to show that, you see. Now, the deaths that I'm writing about here, linked by this professional mourner, Toloki, the professional mourner, who travels from funeral to funeral, mourning the dead. Each one of those deaths is a real death that actually happened. It's a death that I read about in a newspaper, for instance. I would go to the library at Yale there, read South African papers, City Press, Sunday Times, and so on, with stories of, how these people died and so on. So each one of those deaths is either a death that I read in the newspaper or a death that actually happened to my own relatives. For instance, the very first death I write about, when this character was looking for a relative, then I think she, if I remember well, would go, from to different places trying to look for this person, only to find this person being buried somewhere else by another family in another township. That actually happened to my own relatives, to my cousins. So I took these real life deaths, some of which were very personal, but also those that I read in the newspapers, and linked them together in this narrative, with Toloki, the professional mourner, as the key character, you see, who mourns all these deaths, you see.